Right now, our whole food system is on the brink of a collapse.
Some people don't know where their food comes from.
It's not just about soil and microbes.
Yeah.
It's about the health of microbes.
It's big ag. It's the commodity system coming into agriculture, and it just blows up everything.
They had to prevent anything from growing
From growing.
year-round.
That's like being paid for poisoning your children. The first swipe of the magic wand and corporate capture.
There you go.
We have a huge amount of farmland with its water resources being sold to foreign countries.
We're gutting the health of this country by gutting this relationship with the farmer.
I'm Nicole Shanahan. Welcome to Back to the People podcast, which highlights the growth of a movement uniting America, where our government is free from corporate capture and where we give voice back to the American public.
Benina, Ward, Rosie, thanks so much for having us here today on your beautiful farm. We're here at Burroughs Family Farm in Merced County, California. And you guys have been at this for a while now, but I think the biggest transition that you've really had as a farm in the last few decades is going and thinking through what regenerative looks like here. But let's rewind. So was this originally a family farm? Or did you grow up here?
I grew up in the East Bay, up in the Delta, and came down here in the '70s, in the early '70s. And my father put this together, so it's been 50 years since we've been here in Merced County.
Oh,
But as a family partnership of grandmothers and sons and fathers and brothers and that kind of thing, it's 130 years. A continual family farm businesses over 5 generations here in California.
And I learned over lunch that you two met at Cal Poly in college, fell in love, got married right after college, and got to work together.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. 50 years together and 4 children.
4 children.
And raised your kids here.
Here on the farm.
That's beautiful.
One of my ending statements on every presentation I give is that we've been blessed to live and work on a farm where we see the everyday miracles of life.
Yeah, it is a real miracle just driving around and seeing how it is such a perfect symbiotic harmony that you've figured out between your grazing animals, even the dog that cares for the sheep, the quality of the cover crop, how it's come in, it's so lush. And we're in the Central Valley in California where there can be months and months and months without rain. But under that cover crop you showed me today, Benina, it was cool. The soil was cool. And we are in the middle of summer right now. It's one of the hottest weeks this year. And the temperature difference between the top of the grass and the soil was over 50 degrees. And it was just a few inches. You must have seen a microclimate convert around here over your experiences in implementing some of these practices. Share with me some of those.
I think one of the kind of the miraculous things that we've seen since we started organic farming with regenerative practices is every year we've seen new migratory species of birds that have never been here before. And with that, we also continue to see lots of life, wildlife. Ward has created a wildlife habitat with French drains that collect the water and create these ponds for return ponds for reusing the water. And in those ponds, we have migratory ducks that come every year, as well as the water that provides life for the birds that are here visiting whenever they come. It's just beautiful.
For me, it's watching how the organic matter in our soils has dramatically increased by the practices that Benina's implemented over the last 10 or 15 years, you know. And the regenerative maybe is just in the last 5, but organic matter is so key
Yeah.
So key to everything that we're doing, and it's a key to nutrient dense food. See, and which is the end product that we're trying to do here is get all this great quality. But it all goes back to organic matter, and that's the big picture for me.
You were the inspiration for many of these changes. How was that initially received by your parents?
Oh, they're all on board. I mean, they're the ones that actually brought the idea back.
Yeah.
But it took me hearing and seeing the actual data from the Ecdysis Foundation and Dr. Lundgren and Tommy Fenster to validate what they were already saying was what we needed to do.
You produce food. You produce incredibly high quality food here. You get to meet your consumers. You have a connection to them. But do you also consider yourselves climate activists?
I consider myself an activist for many different things, including climate. But for me, the top is health.
Yeah.
So, and I mean health for all living things on the planet, from the birds in the air to the microbes in the soil. All life starts with water, and it is part of the health system using regenerative practices. It's not just about soil and microbes.
Yeah.
It's about the health of the microbes in that symbiotic relationship that becomes miraculous when you see that you don't need to put on synthetic chemicals or toxins or pesticides or herbicides when the microbes can do all of the work for you. And not only do they do all the work for you, but it's better than any synthetic can be added to your soil.
Yeah. And by increasing the soil organic matter, you're drawing carbon out of the atmosphere because this is how the carbon cycle works. It's not just, dead carbon above, dead carbon below. It's actually, carbon above waiting to be activated by the life on Earth. And have you witnessed that with your own eyes? When you go and you look at the soil now compared to a few years ago, can you see, is it visible?
It's very visible on so many levels, but we just went to honor Christine Jones this last weekend.
Yeah.
And we did some soil shovel observations, and you could see all of the life that's created in the soil in just a shovel of dirt.
Wow.
Where Ward and I, a couple years ago, I said, okay, it's in the middle of the winter. Let's see what's happening in our soil. So we just put a shovel in our truck, drove down right where you were today. And we put a shovel in, and it had been cold and rainy. And in one shovel of dirt, there were over 30 earthworms.
Wow.
And even then you could see all the microbe activity that's on the roots. So people don't understand that it's the microbes that are bringing nutrition and nourishment to the plant root.
Yeah.
And that's the same for human health.
Yeah.
We talked about the microbes in our gut and how important people think, well, we're eating and we think we're getting our nutrition. But no, it's the microbes in our gut that's providing us with the nutrition we need. And if we look at those systems together, we know that the carbon cycle, the water cycle, all the eco cycles, right? All of them are part of a cycling system. So for someone to come in one day and just say up or down, they don't know what they're talking about because it is a cycle. So it's always changing, always moving. But we can see it in the soil. We can see it. I'd love to share with you the pictures where last winter we had this torrential river storm event that was happening where it rained continuously for like 2 weeks. And there were farms that we drove by that were flooded and the water didn't drain. And I took a picture and I came back home, and in a half an hour, our farm was not running off water, but had infiltrated the water, and we had our cover crops and our sheep grazing. So that is a visible difference.
Yeah.
But there's when we have researchers come and they're going through our orchards, I ask them to experience life on our farm with all senses. You're not only looking at it, you're hearing life. You can hear the bees buzzing and the pollinators and insects that are flying around. And then you're seeing it, you're touching it, you're smelling it, you're walking on the soil. And if you're walking on healthy soil, you're walking on a sponge, and you can feel the kind of the aggregates that are making space for the water, rainwater to infiltrate. So it's all systems experienced with all senses is what we can feel today. And we didn't know that difference when we first started.
And let's talk about how that actually works, because I realized that there was a benefit to aquifers. I didn't realize the extent of which and how it is proportionally being absorbed when you increase soil organic matter. You were telling me on our tour that an increase of 1% in soil organic matter can increase the amount of water absorbed per acre by about 20 to 25,000 gallons
For 1 acre.
for 1 acre. I didn't realize that was that high. That is an enormous amount of water that gets restored to the ground. And otherwise that would just run off into the rivers and then ultimately down the delta.
All rivers all the way to the ocean, right?
Yeah.
And with that, it's taking topsoil and anything that's polluting our rivers and our oceans is going with it.
It doesn't strike me that the current leadership in California understands the opportunity. Has that been your experience with the agencies? We have a mutual friend. You co-founded the Regenerative Agriculture Center at Chico State University. I've been working with them for a few years, in particular Cynthia Daly, who's a real hero and educator in this space. And she first alerted me a year ago that California's water department is intending to shut down water to about 1 million acres of farmland in the state. Their plan is to lay it fallow, which by definition is to abandon it without any land management strategy. When she first told me about this, I couldn't believe it. And then I asked her, I was like, well, how are they picking which lots to lay fallow and what is the criteria? And at the time, the state was still in a drought. It's no longer in a drought. The last 3 years, we've had incredible rain, which to me signals, well, let's get to work on regenerative agriculture. Let's use all of this rainwater that we now have filling up our dams and our reservoirs, and let's put it to work in restoring the soil. Because if we can use some of that to increase the soil organic matter by 1 or 2%, that means that every single rainfall we're going to have in the future is actually going to go to good use and real production. You had said something earlier to me that this plan is incredibly misaligned and could create a dust bowl if there's this outright abandonment of 1 million acres. That is an enormous amount of acreage here that produces tons and tons of food.
So to just kind of set the plan of what was told to us in the Sigma having farmland retirement. The first time I heard the word farmland retirement was 2 years ago. Now they're talking about farmland repurposing, and there's all different kinds of things that have been thrown out there, like solar farm, turning them into solar farms, restoration projects, wetlands, etc. But here's the critical part where we have a misalignment. They had a pilot program last year, and farmers were asked if they'd like to volunteer to fallow their land, and they would get paid for it. So they did, and several guys were happy to try this out. The problem was they weren't getting paid. And they asked, what happened to paying us for leaving it fallow? We haven't done anything to our land. And they said, you can't have anything growing on your land. So if it rained and you have any plants that are volunteer growing, you have to go out there immediately and disc it or spray it. And some farmers had to spray or disc 6 times in one season for them to get paid for fallowing their land. So the most
That's
important,
like being paid for poisoning your children.
not only poisoning it, but also let's talk about the Dust Bowl that you were talking about.
Yeah.
When you have nothing covering your soil, think of cover crops as being the skin on your body. It's the layer that is protecting all of life in the soil. Speaking of life in the soil, for every teaspoon of healthy soil, there are more microbes in that teaspoon of healthy soil than there are people on the planet. And we haven't even begun to understand the symbiotic relationship that the microbes work together. And I'll just briefly say, so some microbes can say, okay, I need to get some potassium. I'll trade you some potassium for some magnesium or boron or whatever not herb, but whatever nutrient that the plant root needs. And that's provided to it with the microbes and their banking system that they change with each other. But in terms of fallowing land, not to have any cover on it, you're talking about, number one, increasing the temperature for the whole surrounding area, which affects everything. So it's going to be hotter. You saw the difference between covered and not. In a hot day like today, what degrees did you say it was?
I think it got up to 106 when we were out there.
Okay.
But the soil was like in the 50s. It was about
And that-
54 degrees, right?
There was a difference of 50. It was in the high 70s.
Oh, it was in the 70s.
So that is key, like just one of the many benefits of cover crops. But the other part is that if you have nothing protecting your soil when it does rain, we're not recapturing that rainwater that's coming. It's running off and it's eroding our topsoil. It takes hundreds of years to create topsoil, and that is just going into the rivers, into the oceans, and taking with it pollution and silt and things that are harmful for our whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is that for health, here in the central San Joaquin Valley, we have the highest terrible health issues related to lung disease, which is all about air quality. So if we continue to let this soil not be covered and it just flies in the dust, we'll have dust storms. We'll have more diseases that are carried with the dust, like valley fever. And we're going to have problems with all these respiratory issues that have been plaguing our central San Joaquin Valley if we allow the ground to be left uncovered.
Intentionally paying individuals to kill all the life in the soil. I didn't realize that they were withholding payments.
They had to prevent anything from growing year round.
Nothing about that makes any sense whatsoever. And it is beyond imagination that a government could be so misguided. It almost feels as if there's some intentionality around creating a crisis here.
For sure, it's a big concern about a crisis here. Whether it's intentional or not, we'll never know. But what we do know is that it is the wrong thing to require of farmers, because with that practice, we're talking about the economic engine for the state of California.
Yeah.
That just use round numbers. Say they're saying, okay, 20% of all farmland has to be fallowed or repurposed. You're talking about a 20% decrease in the whole economy for California. We're talking about jobs, communities, and everything that goes with the economy of California is now going to be cut 20%. Farmers cannot take a 20% cut. We won't survive. But we do need to find ways of communicating. And really, Cindy Daly, along with Tim LaSalle, those people, we're working towards creating that communication of explaining why the water cycle is part of working with the cover crops rather than just, okay, 20% we need to cut. Okay, let's just cut off the water. Water is part of the life cycle of all the ecosystems. So we need that to continue to be working together. And we can do that with your help.
And we have the water right now. It's one thing to be pushing through these policies when we were in the drought that we were in 5 years ago. But we've been out of a drought now consistently for the last 2 years. So there's no excuse for them to be running a pilot program like the one they were running last year. The pilot programs we ought to be running right now is how to utilize this gift from God of all of this water and get it to productive use to build up our economy, to our communities, the health of our soil, the health of our families. Because, let's face it, if there are food deserts in California, which used to be the breadbasket of the United States, this state has been called the breadbasket of our country for generations now. If we have food deserts in this country, or this state, it doesn't make any sense. We have some of the best soil, the best farmers. We have the will, we have the knowledge, and now we have the water. Mm-hmm. No excuse. No excuse. Ward, you have worked with some of these government agencies. You've taken leadership roles. What is it like going into these positions of representation? Do you feel like you're being heard? And do you think that there is a accurate translation between the will of the farmer and the will of who's leading agricultural policy in the state?
Farmers, of course, are in business to raise food and farm. That's what we love to do. And we've gotten back into this corner because the groundwater situation in California wasn't addressed as in the other Western states 100 or 150 years ago. They all did this before, and now we're overdrafting. Including our farm here, we're overdrafting our groundwater situation, and so it had to be addressed. It had to be addressed, but. What's happened is that it's not an easy fix. It's not an easy fix at all. And so I think all of these farmers realize that if you have subsidence and the ground's going down because the groundwater's been depleted down there, mm-hmm. you're not going to get that back under most of those situations. Mm-hmm. That's something. Yeah, I mean, it sits there and you got to look at it. You got to fix it. We all realize that we're going to have to do some things that we probably don't want to do mm-hmm. In order for it to get fixed. And the most of the plans are going to require us to not farm some of our ground. Mm-hmm. There are some new technologies and we're looking at some of them, and we're going to try to not lose too much ground. But most farmers plant 100% of what they have.
Yeah.
And this whole regenerative idea is got us, going in some other directions, and it's important that those are brought out. Okay. Mm-hmm. This whole hedgerow idea, and leaving areas that are there for wildlife and beneficial and all the good stuff that's for. Mm-hmm. And these ideas need to be considered when they're coming up with these plans. Mm-hmm. DWR doesn't really care about regenerative farming. Okay, they just want to get whatever they want. Okay, mm-hmm. So some of these ideas, like this fallowing of ground, is going to be they want to force it down people's throats. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the regenerative organic or regenerative voice is being heard, mm-hmm. and so that this whole idea of a dust bowl does not happen. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my things, the thing that comes up to me is they ought to outlaw a disc plow, anything that's gonna turn that ground over and create that dust bowl. Okay. Mm-hmm. We ought to be required if we don't want anything growing, we need the coverage, and if the tall grass is not the answer, then we need you mow it, or you crimp or roll or crimp it or something, but to keep it covered. Mm-hmm. But darn for sure, don't just leave bare ground. impervious
Yeah.
or soil not covered. And anyway, but those ideas are what we're trying to make sure are represented at the Groundwater Sustainability Agency level. And there's a whole bunch of these GSAs throughout the state that are managing locally the all this local ground. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that it's very obvious if you work with the land as the way you work with every day, that your family works with the land, it becomes very obvious what the solutions are for this state and even this country. And there's a lack of translation that's happening. Either they're not listening, the Secretary of Agriculture, I've actually been trying to get in touch with and show her some of the data that Cindy Daly has collected at Chico State that clearly shows that there's an incredible amount of regenerative potential if we just focus on those lots and invest in those lots. But here we are now spending all of our energy fighting the Department of Water Resources, DWR, and keeping them from doing something so seemingly suicidal. It would be such a disaster for the state to lay fallow and to only reward farmers if they are spraying down all life growing on that land and eliminating it. We're spending all of our energy fighting these backwards policies. And if we had the opportunity to free up these combined resources and put them into a positive direction, we could move so quickly.
It would be a very fast recovery. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of the research across the nation, is that it can be done and it can turn around faster than anyone ever imagined.
It's just a number of even a season, like one growing season to another growing season.
It depends on how depleted the soil has been.
Yeah.
But we're hearing fabulous things from Gabe Brown and others that are working with farmers across the nation. It gives us hope, and it's something that we need to get the word out so that more farmers can start implementing these practices.
When we were driving around and talked about some of the good, let's talk about some of the good policies that have come through. We got to give kudos where they're owed. One of them was a fund that supported farmers in purchasing cover crops. And you said it was about $60 per acre.
That's about right, I think.
Is that? You said this was a great program. One of the challenges is that sometimes it's slow to get the payment out, and if you miss an application cycle, you're kind of shit out of luck. But so you've got to really stay on top of it, and you have to have incredible motivation even to catch that window.
Right. Or to get the right seed, or if there is seed available for what you want to, for your locale of the varieties. You want diversity. That's one of the key things in regenerative is diversity.
If you could wave a magic wand, what would that program look like?
The magic wand would be that we're getting paid for what we're producing, so we don't need to have any extra subsidies or extra help.
What would your magic wand do, Ward?
We need to educate our urban population so that we're not fighting them to get these ideas, get some of these ideas across. I'm sorry, but in my 72 years is telling me that government is bought and sold, whether it's in Washington or in Sacramento. And so big ag and big chemical and big pharma and all of those kinds of get whatever they want. And it's very difficult to be on the other end of that, okay? And that's where we are. My magic wants to. I just want it to be a fair playing field for everybody, okay? And somehow we have to figure out how to get that, because so we've been in organics for 20 years, right? And it worked for a little while. It hasn't worked for 10 or 15 of those, and it's big ag. It's the commodity system coming into agriculture, and it just blows up everything.
It's a broken food system.
You know, my magic wand, I want to fix those things.
Yeah. First swipe of the magic wand, end corporate capture.
There you go.
And then the second is common sense, right? It sounds like the common theme is fairness and having common sense about how nature actually works.
Yeah.
It's been really disheartening for me to hear stories like the one you shared at lunch of your daughter having a cow share, and to have the enforcement officers come and threaten to shut down her operation, and then eventually shutting down her operation. I'm hearing stories like this all over the country from family farmers, that they're being watched. They're being watched online, and they're having pretty significant deployment of force. This is, again, there's something really scary and weird and frustrating about this, that some of our most inspired citizens in this country are being treated as if they're running a criminal enterprise. I mean, and the harassment, and it's absurd.
It is. And we have dear friends that have been through that. And not only did they come in and take everything that was related to raw milk products, but they took everything else as well, shut them down completely. So this is, you know, there's a lot of help that needs to be throughout our whole country, our nation, but there are so many good people. I have faith and hope that we can turn this around. And with the consumer, Ward says we're connected to our consumer, because the consumer votes with their paying dollar in purchasing our products. So it's all part of the supply and demand, but it's also about education and understanding. Other countries honor their farmers and really care about the food that they're being produced, food and fiber that's happening for them in the cities.
Well, what I'm seeing is that there is a growing recognition of the importance of the work that you do. And I've been really excited to see that. The production of some of the movies on regenerative agriculture have helped with that. But you've had people coming to you and saying, thank you for creating this produce. It's really helped my family feel better. And so on one hand, that groundswell of support is coming from the consumer. It's happening. That's really something to be excited about. But on the other hand, you have government that still remains disconnected, still remains a threat. And no politician should be a party to this culture. And it is on the politician. It's 100% on the politician to be out here and understanding the depths of what is happening on just a spiritual level in this country as well. We're gutting the health of this country by gutting this relationship with the farmer.
That's powerful. Really powerful. One thing, I spoke to a subcommittee in Congress 2 years ago, and it was on regenerative ag. And at the end of it, I said, there's an important message I want to take up to DC, and that is that our most valuable resource in this nation is the land and the farmers on the land. And right now, we have a huge amount of farmland with its water resources being sold to foreign countries, foreign investors. We have lost some of the most precious resources we have to foreign countries. And when our realtor here in Merced County asked these foreign investments, especially from China, what's your interest in ag land? They said, we want to make sure we have a food supply in the future for our people. And
It's true. It is our most valuable resource, is our agricultural land. They might be buying some condos here and there, but what they're really focused on is food supply.
Yes.
And
And no one's talking about that.
there's some groups, but they're being censored.
Oh, that's why we need your help, along with Bobby's, to take care of our nation. Because right now it's feeling pretty low about taking care of our American farmer.
I've received criticism for putting soil front and center. And people say to me, why aren't you talking about the economy? Why aren't you talking about foreign overseas wars? Why aren't you talking about education in this country, housing affordability? And the truth of the matter is that if we invest in the soil and the farmers and the small businesses, we solve all of these other issues.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely.
It is the best thing for our national security,
Big time.
our foreign policy, because we'll have goods that are of value that we can trade. We can increase productivity across the country by increasing the productivity of our soil. It solves all of our nation's greatest issues. And getting people to understand that and see past the propaganda that they're seeing and the fear-mongering of this two-party system, and getting them to see the reality of where we're going to have our productivity boom. I don't think it's going to be in AI. It's going to be in soil.
Without food and fiber, there is no life. Food comes first. Think of the basic, we need our air, our water, shelter, and food. And right now, our whole food system is on the brink of a collapse, and nobody knows about it.
Arguably, it's collapsed when you look at the childhood disease rates.
Health for sure, here in the central San Joaquin Valley.
Yeah. I mean, just think about the number of farmers going out of business in the state alone. It's absurd to me that we're allowing this to happen. And I think that it would be so easy for us to invest in $60 per acre and cover crops. We could probably cover this entire state's agricultural lands for a few $1 billion. And it would likely also help with heat and climate.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Everything
Water.
benefits from balance and harmony that Mother Earth is. And actually, I'm even going to go a little bit further, but Earth is part of the cosmic system. So Earth does affect the whole cosmic world. And that is like big. When you think of the universe, and the Earth is one small part.
Yeah.
But this one small part has a big contribution to make for health for all living beings.
Yeah, life itself.
Life.
And it
Water is
starts
the
in
cycle
soil.
of life.
Soil and water.
Yeah.
What is your background?
When you ask me my background, are you talking about my family?
I mean, I
or
know
what
you're a
do?
sacred woman. I've got that.
Yeah.
But what, like ethnically, like what, because that's a really big understanding. That is, deeply in terms of our understanding of ancient and cosmic cycles and relationships.
Respect is probably one of the things that comes with my family background. So both my mom and dad are from New Mexico. Both had Spanish Basque men that married Native women. So Ute, Pueblo, Acoma, those are all tribes that are in my background. And then you throw in the Heinz 57 of a little French and, a little this, little that. So I have a very rich heritage of connection to the land. My dad grew up on a ranch in New Mexico, and as a little girl, I heard his stories about riding the horse across the Rio Grande and making cheese with milk that he was carrying on a saddle back to the Pueblo. And because of that, I loved the outside. So when I was a kid, I liked chopping wood.
Yeah.
There's a book called Chopping Wood, Carrying Water. I like that, but it was more of a reverence for the spirituality of Mother Earth. That's where I'm coming from. So when I was a little girl, I loved the ranching life of my dad's stories. And as a Girl Scout, I took a horsewoman's badge. And from there, then in high school, I heard some kids talking about FFA. It was the first year women were allowed in agriculture, and that there was a teacher that could teach ag. So I went to my
Wow.
teacher, and he wasn't my teacher then. I just went to this teacher and said, "Would you like to teach ag?" And he raised his eyebrow at me and he said, "Yes." And I went to the principal at the high school and said, "We have a group of students that'd like to take ag, and we have a teacher that can teach it. Can we start this class right away?" And they said yes. So I was the first girl to sign an FFA charter
Wow.
because women were just allowed in.
Yeah.
And my FFA advisor led me to Cal Poly. So Cal Poly I was taking the horse training classes there. I had a saddle in my apartment when Ward came over to visit my roommate, because my roommate's grandmother and Ward's grandmother were pen pals. So that's
No way.
So that's how we met. It was because my saddle was in the living room. He asked me about the horse training, and from there, it's about being mother. So on my income tax, occupation, I'd put mother, because to me, mother's the most important occupation we have for a life.
Yeah.
And raising my children became paramount of importance. So there's where my health came in for my children, and eating well and then living well. Benina's she's a big hero, because she said, if I don't want to be working with pesticides and herbicides and toxic chemicals, I don't want my staff to either. She said, we're not going to do this anymore. If we're going to go organic, we're going all. And so all of our land here in California and in Oregon is all certified organic, because Benina led the family with the conviction, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And Ward was very worried about it. And she said to her dad, "Dad, it's okay. We'll figure it out."
Wow. I love that story.
Yeah.
There is something about being a mom and doing work from that perspective, especially work as it relates to the land and the people and the water. Changes everything when you look at it through the lens of being a woman that has raised a being in their womb, and that raises this little being from this tiny 7-pound size, and knowing all that goes into life. And then you put that into your work, and it's transformative.
We wouldn't farm today if we had to go back to conventional farming. My husband said 10 years ago, now that we've learned about organic farming, I can never go back. I can never go back and put any toxic chemicals on the land. We just won't do it.
Yeah.
And with that, mother, protector, provider, in terms of nourishment, nourishing traditions, all of that came into being the same for our land, is that we wanted to nurture.
And the courage and the faith that comes with it.
Courage was hard, because we had a lot of people that didn't want to hear about organic farming. And, really nobody wants to hear about what they're doing wrong. So we want to take farmers where they are, and we want to help them and support them to follow the journey. And we're not saying we have it all, dialed in. It's a journey. We're still learning, and we'll continue to learn the rest of our lives. It's a lifelong educational experience to be a farmer.
Yeah, that's so rewarding. Walking around, it's some of the landscapes that you get to see on a daily basis. Some people go their whole lives without seeing. They don't know where their food comes from. And so much of what factory farming has done to our landscapes is so ugly. But you guys actually get to see what lush food production in an ecologically healthy environment looks like every day. How does that feel to go out there and open your eyes and see the product of so many decades of hard work.
For Ward and I, it's our lifelong passion now, our commitment, our dedication, and more importantly, I think it's who we are now in every breath we take
Yeah.
and every decision we make.
Yeah. And you've become teachers and models for people that are curious.
We're just on a journey, and everybody, we love to hold hands with other people that want to learn. And it's pretty special when you get people that respond at one of our events like, that was the best eye-opening experience I've ever had in my lifetime.
Wow.
Or you have changed my life forever because now I want to learn more about regenerative. Or whatever many comments you guys have heard as well. It's really special when we have a young farmer that comes over and says, I want to learn more about what you're doing. And we've helped a lot of farmers and we'll continue.
Wow.
We believe in passing forward, right? Helping the next generation.
We're extremely proud of this farm, and what it, the journey that it's on, and of course our legacy is wrapped up with Benina and Eddie and
The grandchildren are
and their kids too. It's very rewarding. We try to take care of anybody that wants to come and see our farm, so we had some Japanese kids, a couple times, a couple buses worth.
Wow.
And these kids were not agriculture kids at all. And so there was 40 or 50 on each bus. And really we took them on a tour, but the trailers that are right there, a little hayride to look around and try to see some of the things that we're doing here. And there was one kid that was out of the 100 that was there that came up and he asked questions. He was very, very concerned about climate and where the world's going. And so for him to see that there were farmers in the United States that were actually thinking this way and doing and managing this way was extremely interesting for him. And he stayed, and he was the last one on the bus. And we've had other people from around the world that have shown some of that same kind of interest. You get some of it here. We see it at the Regenerative Almond Field workshops. Mm-hmm. And of course those are and we saw it at the Soil Health Academy event that we had here a month ago. So there's a lot of people that are interested in it. It's in its infancy as far as I'm concerned, and we got a long ways to go. But that word proud, we're very, very proud of the farm and the family.
I really deeply believe that this is where we're going to find a productivity boom. If you talk to any economists and you talk about the debt and the economic crisis that we're in as a country, endless spending, need to increase productivity, where are we going to find it? Is it going to be AI? And that's my background. I actually am an AI developer. I developed AI patent attorney. I sold that company, but that's been my life, is understanding what AI is going to do to society. And I've looked at all of the different economic models, assuming we have robots farming and we have robots doing X, Y, and Z, but that's actually not the kind of human productivity boom that we need. The kind of human productivity boom we need are actually getting people to own and steward and connect with land again and rethink the entire household economic model. If you're producing let's look back to America in 1775. 90% of American families produced a portion of their food.
Yeah.
And there was actually quite a bit of productivity in that. If we can convince more small, medium-sized farms to do this kind of work, it creates productivity and it realigns our spending entirely. Mm-hmm. And you guys are a lived example of that, right? You produce so much of what you eat here, and then you sell the excess. You also hire quite a few people, which supports an entire local economy as well. And so you're part of this. You're a living example of an economic hub of this new productivity model. What would you say to a young person who's curious about starting a farm today? What's the number one advice you'd give them?
Start small and build up, but definitely go get some hands-on learning. I mean, we're open for that. We have, there's opportunities here. We don't grow any vegetables, but if somebody was into that, we have the land base to definitely support that. There's just only so many of us, so.
Mentorship.
Yeah.
Go learn from the
Ward,
best.
what about you?
Find your mentors and get that experience and follow their lead. We've all had that in our lives, and that it's really, really important. Probably more important in agriculture than any other line of work, I think. And do your research and go this regenerative way. Get on the soil, get your hands dirty, and that would be my recommendation.
Get your hands dirty.
Yep.
Get to it.
Get in the soil.
Yeah.
My one piece of advice for anybody, any youth, would be do not let anyone close the door on you, because wherever a door has been closed, God always has another window open for you. Mm-hmm. So perseverance, determination.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you for hosting us here today. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your stories. It sounds like regenerative agriculture is not just a practice, it is a transformation of self.
It is.
Sounds really,
It is.
really,
It is.
really comprehensive. It's a whole self paradigm shift.
Yeah. I don't know if Benina had a chance to tell you about our hedgerows.
Yeah. Oh, we covered we saw some of them as we were driving through and heard a little bit about the hedgerow programs.
Well, hedgerows are so important for the whole part of regenerative practices because it's creating a little ecosystem for beneficials. So we have something in bloom every day of the year.
Wow. What's a beneficial?
Any kind of a pollinator or insect or butterfly, bees, birds, and actually any mammal or insect that wants to live in the habitat. So beneficials are things that create balance to the life on the planet.
And that gives us balance in our bodies too.
I don't think people realize that pollinators are necessary for food production.
I didn't know that.
70% of the vegetables that we eat require a pollinator.
Really?
And we're a Monarch Watch pollinator station for monarchs. And we planted our native narrowleaf milkweed, which is the only plant a monarch caterpillar eats for its life before it turns into a butterfly. Butterflies, bees, they're all part of the balance of our system here at our farm.
They're literally our friends, huh? Mm-hmm. In terms of sustenance. Is there anything else that we wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
I just want to share one vision that I have, and that is with the Stacking Enterprises. you know, a young orchard, it takes at least 3 years, if not 4, before it's into production. So how can we use that land, help build its healthiness, and still have some income coming in? Because that would really help with the economy and the economics of the actual farm. But stacking enterprises like meat chickens, or
Yeah.
even rabbits or other poultry, like how can we come up with systems that are using the ground where all these rows of trees are, that we can be fertilizing and adding, you know, manure and helping cycle the nutrients with whatever animals are on there. But then also all of that food is going to be nutrient dense. It's rotating through these orchards, and then all of that is turning into products that then can be sold, which is basically a cash crop, because they don't take that long to come to maturity. And then that just is helping the whole cycle right there.
Yeah. If you have a paper on how that could be accomplished, I'd be happy to publish it on, you know, through our channels as well and turn it into policy.
Well, I mean, it just, to me, it makes, again, sense and sense, but it's getting it done.
Oh, I like
So-
that. Sense and sense.
You haven't heard
Yeah.
that?
No, I didn't hear you say that, but that's good.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
working on it with another poultry guy. I don't have it like totally figured out yet, but I envision that like magic of, you know, nutrient dense food,
Yeah.
proteins, and then generating income while your land is unproductive.
Or while your land is working on getting productive, right?
Right.
You shared with me this model of letting the land rest,
Right.
which is giving it time to regenerate itself and not like actively have it working all the time, because
Right.
it does need time to I mean, we need rest. The land needs
Right.
rest too. But during that time, that the surface area can be used for raising chickens. That's so neat.
I like how you just brought that up. That is something maybe that we should think about with farmers, is that time of rest. Like, new farmers could come in,
Yeah.
give the old farmers a year off.
Sabbaticals.
Sabbaticals in farming. That's not very common, I don't think.
Well, it's given how much you teach, professors are given sabbaticals. Farmers should be given sabbaticals too, especially if there's an opportunity for somebody young to come in, do the work, get the experience, have the mentorship. It's the sensei model.
It is.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Well, you've given me a lot to think about.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm just so grateful to the work you do.